start right in here. We're going to start right in, okay? Because we got lots to talk about.
Okay.
We're only going to talk about the Flyers themselves for a brief period of time.
Screw the pre-show. Okay.
No, that was the pre-show. That was just a warning. So.
Oh, that's the warning. Okay.
We're going to say 20 minutes from now, we're going to stop talking about the Flyers, and at that point, I will put this. I will hold this up, and you guys can. Ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, December 18th. We are 1 week from Christmas, kids. 2018.
I'm Michael Agello, and I love Tang.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Check out my new shirt. They're on
guys.
They're on Instagram.
Those guys are cool.
Yeah.
They want
underscore Rister underscore hockey on Instagram.
Is
very comfortable. Very comfortable shirt.
Is D. Snyder on the show?
What's their name again, Russ? Did we get it out there? Because I talked over you.
What's it? Oh, the Instagram handle is twisted underscore Rister underscore hockey, I believe.
Yeah.
D. Snyder. That's funny, Mike, because growing up on Long Island, I saw a lot of D. Snyder. So maybe too much.
Well, I grew up in the town
I want to rock.
From, so that's the band Cinderella was from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, like me, and Bobby Ryan, Cinderella, and I are all from Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
I think Zebra is from New Jersey too.
Yeah.
I don't know if Zebra. I could tell you the band from my neighborhood was the Stray Cats. The Stray Cats. I saw them in a regular bar.
Really?
More than times. Yeah.
Brian Setzer. Okay, continue.
This is not a pre-show, but I want to say that I'm going to say this right now that I saw, because I want to be like, I saw Nirvana at the Khyber Pass in Philadelphia. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know what the Khyber Pass is or not.
No.
Khyber Pass is a place that maybe is as big as my office. It feels like 120 people maybe standing up. Everybody's standing up.
Okay.
I saw Nirvana the first time they came through Philly at the Khyber Pass.
No, I didn't see these bands, but I know my brother was there for one of them. There was a small concert venue, maybe literally 3 blocks from my family home, called Uncle Sam's in Cheektowaga, and the Police played there on their first tour. I think it was in '76 or '77. The Outlandos d'Amore, I think was the tour. Regatta de Blanc, one of the albums, and U2 played there as well. And the advertisement screwed up for U2. They had them listed as V2 instead of U2.
That's great.
Funny.
Yes, and then
it's just a letter off. I mean,
yeah, and ironically, they played Buffalo the night that John Lennon was killed. So every time they come back to Buffalo, they remember that, obviously, and they reference it during the show.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because Buffalo's big on the U2 tour. I know.
Interesting. All right. That's
my first thought when the tour manager starts it. When are we going back to Buffalo?
It's a prerequisite. Okay, let's get off of this.
Hearing the show. I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. That was not a pre-show. It was just the
longest intro in history.
All right, so we're going to start off, and like I promised everybody in what was the actual pre-show before the fake pre-show that just occurred, was that we are not going to talk all. And I have written 4 Flyers blogs in a row, and I obviously live here. Obviously, the Flyers credential me. So it is tough not to write about the Flyers, but we have Bill Meltzer, who I think is maybe the best Flyers writer on the planet.
I would agree with that.
On Hockey Buzz. So I feel like I can get away from the Flyers a lot. But what I try to do is take the more national perspective usually, so my angle on the Flyers thing today is hockey fans, okay? And so I'm gonna and that's why I think we're gonna talk a little about the Flyers thing and what I think about that. But then we're gonna get into hockey fans in general, because I think it's an important topic to have, and that's what I wrote about. And I told you guys not to read my blog today, so I could kind of like be fresh with all these thoughts. Mm-hmm. Not that I had to tell you that, because you never read the blog.
I restrained myself.
I'm just saying, if you were to somehow accidentally open up my blog and be like, "Wait a second, what am I reading?" Oh, this is that, and then closed it. I just didn't want that to happen.
Since I had to embed the podcast, the Buzzcast into your blog, I couldn't help but read some of it.
That's fine. And anyway, so the concept is right. Even if you're actually going to the blog and not going to just look at the podcast and not reading the words above it. Anyway, here we go. So here's Peter Tessier. So Peter, we're live. So my concept today is not just on the Flyers, like I said. It is on hockey fans and what hockey fans are in general and what this means in 2018. All right. And the reason I bring this up is because over the last week or so, I've seen a couple things happening, because this is happening in Philadelphia. I have a lot of friends. Obviously, I grew up in Philadelphia. I was almost at every Flyers game between 1981 and 2002, whenever I started before the lockout, before I did this job. I would go to games with my family, and I was in the Flyers. So I know what Flyers fans are like. I know kind of how this plays out. So I still have a lot of friends, and I get a lot of texts from people who are what I'm going to call them Joe Flyers fan, because this guy actually literally is named Joe that I'm going to refer to. And he's a parent of somebody on my daughter's travel soccer team, and he's a friend, and we talk. He's an Philadelphia Eagles season ticket holder, loves the Flyers, but the Flyers are something that he does in between Eagles games, but he's he's the kind of guy who will text me throughout the game, with just like, oh, why are they doing this, or why are they that kind of thing, and he's just a fan. So this whole thing is going down with Quenneville and all this stuff, and he's saying, what's the real story? And I'm telling him everything I know and a little bit of off the record stuff that I can't, but just to my friend or whatever, as you would do with a friend. And he says, well, they got to bring up Carter Hart. And I said, no, you don't want to bring up Carter Hart because you don't want to rush him in. He's a real prospect. He's a serious, this is a serious goalie, one of the best prospects that's come out maybe in a decade. Some people say as a goalie, this guy, he's like, screw that. That's BS. This is his response back to me. That's BS. If he can stop a puck, he can stop a puck, bring him up already. All right. And my response is like, well, that's, whatever, and of course, now as an arrogant hockey reporter, I can sit there and say, yeah, that's ridiculous and you should never do that. Right. And that doesn't make any sense because yes, you're going to kill this guy. And my friend Russ would tell me that every prospect needs to spend, at least the amount of time that they spent learning how to speak and learn grammar in elementary school in the minors. They need to be 5 or 6 good years in the minors. So, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you know what I'm saying? So, So then, Carter Hart gets called up yesterday when everybody's freaking out, and his response to me, "See, I told you, I was right. Carter Hart, he's a Flyer!" Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Right? All right. Now we're all going to hate, and I'm saying this in one of the worlds I live in, which is the internet world. Okay, so if I was to say this with a bunch of my friends, which I kind of feel like you guys are, I would be like, Joe's just Joe, that's cool. He's a hockey fan. He wants to see Carter Hart play. Who can blame him? After 20 years of what's happening as goalies in Philadelphia, and you got the best prospect to rush him half a year early, is that the worst thing in the world for the guy? So that's where Joe's coming from, and there's a lot of people like that, right? There's a lot of people like that, a whole lot of people like that out there. But we live on the hockey internet, which is a small subset of that, and hockey internet people, all know because we've been trained by people like Russ and by people like Ron Hextall. That prospects need to develop, need to grow, and all that's true. It's 100% true. There's no question about it. I'm not saying that Russ is wrong. And the funny thing is, a lot of people go out there and they say, everybody thinks they're an expert because they're on hockey Twitter all the time. And the fact of the matter is, if you're on hockey Twitter all the time, you can get a lot of expertise. You really can. You actually, I'm not going to sit there and tell you that you're not pretty good at understanding. This is not rocket science, what we're doing here. If you're on there, and every writer who we've ever had, or Mike or Peter or all these other people, they start off as fans of hockey, like we all should, because that's what we do. Right? So, right. And then you build up, and so hockey internet people, they know what they're talking about, and I often say my joke about comment threads is it's 1 against 1,000, like it's me against 1,000 other opinions who collectively know more than I do for sure, and maybe individually do. So there's the two worlds colliding in this Carter Hart thing, okay? And the question is, we can sit there and say what's right, and our job as analysts is to say it's the right thing to do, is to let Carter Hart, marinate for a while, and I don't know, pick up somebody off of waivers like you talked about, because they're doing this because they have injuries. They wouldn't be doing this otherwise. But then again, Gordon is a pretty smart guy, and Gordon comes in, and Gordon has had Carter Hart for the entire year, and he's seen what Carter Hart's all about.
Not for the entire year. He's had him for a few games. He's had him for like 20 games
this season.
Right. Well, it's not even a full year, but
not a full year, right? That's fair. But he has been around him enough to know kind of the person he is to a degree, and mentally, I think they went to him and they said, "Do you think he's strong enough to handle this if it goes wrong?" Like, because it's very possible that it could go wrong, and will that be the end of Carter Hart's career, or are we just looking at, like, if the Flyers lose 7-0 to Detroit tonight with Carter Hart in starter, is that going to really kill him, or is it going to just be like another part of a goalie who's already mentally strong? And I think they made the decision to go that Carter Hart's mentally strong enough to handle this. I think that played into this. Now, there is something to the fact that Flyers fans are completely and utterly tired of everything that's going on here, and there is a little bit of excitement. Like, I usually go on StubHub to see how much excitement is going on around the Flyers, and you've been able to get tickets for $7 or $8 at times this year. Tonight's cheapest ticket is like $40. Why is that? Well, it's because Carter Hart's playing, and there's curiosity. There's people are interested.
Right. Everybody likes to see a train wreck.
No, everybody likes to see the first game of a player, right? So it's like
I'm being facetious.
Fans are going, because the point is this: Flyers fans like myself, pre-Hextall, pre the internet, were very different than they are now. Like, like if you grew up around Ed Snyder and that was all you knew, then you knew that the team was this team. What you knew of hockey was that you just went for it all the time, and that's not the right way to do it. But that was the Flyers' way to do it, and sometimes it worked for them, and sometimes and often it didn't.
All right, so I'm gonna give you a guy.
All right, but let me finish my thought, and then you're off. They're off. I promise you.
Okay.
Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But at least you had hope, because for all that Hextall was good at with building teams and building prospects and all that stuff, he sucked at selling hope to this city. He was awful at it, and frankly, because when you would bring up a player you would bring up Carter Hart, he'd be like, "Oh, don't even think about it. He's years off," and that's not the way a GM sells hope to a city. That's not the way Flyers fans grew up with. Like, let's go for it with whatever we can. So tonight, remember that if Ed Snyder can be encapsulated in anything at all, it's the fact that Paul Holmgren, who was like a completely, like, he was not a goon, but on the goonish level, who could play a little bit, who had a good year when he played with Ken Lindemann, but besides that, never scored more than like 15 goals in a season.
Yeah. Actually
rose through coaching, GM to president of the Flyers, because that's the way Ed Snyder worked. Paul Holmgren is an Ed Snyder creation, 1,000%. Don't get it. So when Paul's looking at the way this is going, and he's seeing how this is happening, and he's seeing like that, Ed would not have loved this lack of hope that Flyers fans were showing, whether or not right or wrong.
But this is the thing. How many Stanley?
I promise you. So this, and then I will let you guys go. I promise. But I don't want this to go on too long. That's why I'm interrupting. Okay, because I want to say my thing, and then I will move on.
Go ahead.
I want you guys to tell me what you think. So, Flyers fans tonight are stepping backwards a little bit to a time when they put Darren Jensen in goal after Pelle Lindbergh was hurt, and they won the game, and they shouldn't have. When they played a goalie named Ron Hextall, who was young but being played by Mike Keenan, because Mike Keenan did whatever he wanted to do. When they brought in Dave Poulin, when they brought in other players, you're talking about players that the youngest that Flyers team that won 35 games unbeaten had players that were way too young to be playing in the NHL at the time. Right. Derek Smith, Dave Poulin, Brian Propp. These guys were all. This city understands hockey at its root. They understand why this is happening today.
All right. Can I bring up anything yet or not?
No, that's it. That's my point. I've made it.
Russ, you go first. I'll go next. Then Peter can go.
Russ, Peter.
So first guy I thought of when all this happened was Maxime Ouellet. Were you there for his first game or second game?
Yes.
Okay, so his first game, he backed up. He came in for 6 goals. Six attempts. He stopped all 6. That's a good way to sort of dip in a 19-year-old, even though it's way too young, into the league. Not a start.
And he was a high prospect. He was a good prospect.
And now he was a first rounder. And now when you're desperate, and he was good in junior too. So then his next start, his first one, and his last one for the Flyers, he was fine. He was 18 for 21 and 18 saves, 21 shots against, 857, and that was it. And you never saw Maxime Ouellet again in a Flyers uniform. My point is, you don't know what the effects are on this until long after. You won't know by interviewing him. It doesn't matter what he tells you. It's all up here. And to bring a kid in when a team is struggling and really bring him in as a savior, because what did Chuck Fletcher say yesterday? Because we've tried everything else.
That's his quote.
That is his quote.
I agree. No, it's horrible, and I couldn't agree more. Like the hockey internet, who the expert in what we do, agrees with you 100% that they should never have said that. That was absolutely horrible.
But he did say it. That's my point, because that is the climate right now.
Yeah.
And he said it because he meant it, because he's been trying to make a trade and he hasn't been able to make a trade. He could have picked up Chad Johnson. He didn't need to put Carter Hart in. If he'd have brought up Carter Hart and said, hey, we're rebuilding, don't worry about this game or even the next 10, it doesn't matter. Totally different situation. I might even be more on board, but they are still expecting to make the playoffs, and now you're expecting to do this on the back of a 20-year-old. And that's very risky.
Okay, let me have one response to that, and then I'll let then Mike, you're up. One response to what so we can keep this organized, so we go quickly. All right, one response to that is this: as a goalie, I would love to be in Carter Hart's position tonight, and the reason is because most goalies live under pressure constantly. Like, and this guy's lived under pressure. He's played for intense pressure for Memorial Cups, for World Juniors. He's
not Memorial Cup, but World Juniors.
Yeah, I guess the team made Memorial Cup, but he's played in playoffs. He's played in situations like that, right? So and he's had incredible statistics. So he seems to be as cool. You met him. He's a really mature kid.
Oh yeah.
To me, the situation here, if I'm the goalie going into this, and my daughter's a goalie, so I deal with her like her psychology of goaltending all the time. Most of the time, as a goalie, when you play on a good team, the whole thing is about you not losing the game for that team. It's like mentally, you're like, I gotta be good enough. If I screw up, we're gonna lose. There is nothing better as a goalie than going into a game that you're expected to lose. Right? And I'm not saying that there's a mental aspect to that is incredibly freeing as a goalie, because all you can do is steal the game. And if you lose, you lose. Right? So that's my counter to that. All right,
you really think that's all that's at stake here? You really think it's that simple? Sorry,
but the thing is here is that tonight is unimportant. Really, tonight is unimportant. It's the long-term ramifications of what this does to Carter Hart. I mean, going back to what you said in your article about, the hockey internet and the fans. Yeah. If you're an organization that bases your decisions on what the fans want, you are lost. You are stupid. You cannot do that.
But understand what the fans want is because of the way the organization has been. Okay.
Yeah, so but how many Stanley Cups have they won since 1975 doing that, Eck?
That's what I'm saying. Finals more times than a lot of teams.
Right, but they're just as unsuccessful. I mean, the Leafs haven't made the Stanley Cup since 1967, but the same thing has been going on with that organization for the last 51 years.
No, and you're right. You can't let your fans run it.
I don't think
they're doing tonight because of that.
But what I'm talking about is, and with the Leafs, it hasn't been as much goaltenders as it has been defensemen. Back in the 80s, they had a 3 prospects. Jim Benning, the current Vancouver GM, was a first-round pick of the Leafs. Bob McGill and Fred Boimstruck. They all promoted them in their early 20s or even in their teens, right. And they ruined all of them. They ruined all of them. And there was an article in The Athletic by Jonathan Willis yesterday about Luke Schenn. Luke Schenn is the prototypical example of the negative that could happen with Carter Hart here. You draft him 5th overall. You put him in the league as an 18-year-old, and he has a great year his first year. Right. But the whole problem is he didn't learn They didn't learn the finer points of the game. They threw him in there. He played a ton of 5-on-5 minutes. He had a great rookie year, but he couldn't deal with the NHL because he didn't have a proper base of knowledge of how to survive for 10 to 15 years. And now the guy's in the Anaheim Ducks minor leagues and nobody claimed him on waivers. I think Carter Hart is a great prospect, but if you throw him in, even if he has success in the short term, you are risking a guy who could be your goaltender for the next decade because you're looking for a stopgap measure, and that's just stupid. Go ahead, Peter.
Okay.
I don't even know where to begin. I missed yesterday, and it was kind of unfortunate. I wish I didn't have to, but I had to. Eck, in your blog, you used the word hope.
Yeah.
And you know my feelings about hope.
I know hope is not a plan.
Hope is never a plan. If Paul Holmgren
but sports
and Bobby Clark are operating with, I believe the gentleman's name is Scott, right? What's his name? Dave Scott. With some sort of clairvoyant connection to Ed Snyder from the grave, and are using his spiritual energy and beliefs to guide this franchise, and they don't think that Ron Hextall provided hope, then you should burn it all to the ground. In fact, Ron Hextall has given this franchise more hope than it should have had.
Yep.
He fixed more problems. Hope is a result of actions. You hope for good things, but if you're a sports fan, you are either full of hope or you have no hope. And if the Flyers organization gives you no hope based on the assets they have and such, then you shouldn't be talking about hope with that team. It's deep in prospects. It has cap space.
Mhm.
It's missing one thing: goaltending. And actually, it's not just missing one thing. Some very cursory numbers, the most basic numbers. They're 29th in the league overall. They're minus 23 in goal differential.
Yep.
They're 26th in goals for, and they're 28th in goals against. They've got a scoring problem too.
Sounds like a quick turnaround to me.
Yeah.
Power
This
play.
is about as much of fixing what's wrong with the team in a bigger sense. So they went after the GM instead of the coach. That says all you need to know about process management, because even if we believe half of what's come out about Ron Hextall, spies in the room,
which happens
like that, even if it's half of it's true, and Hextall's long-ranging reach was down to the bench during games, and he somehow had that control to mess up Hextall's head, that's even far-fetched. At the end of the day, you need a coach who can take the assets that you have and make them function. Dave Hextall was the guy to get the assets to where they are. Just like I think Travis Green is going to be the guy in Vancouver to get the assets to a certain point. Then you bring in the right person. Clark and Scott and Holmgren came in and went hog wild. It was almost like, we got the keys to the car again, homie. Let's go nuts and take it out for a drive. And they just, and what they did, they crapped it around a lamppost. And they've got a smoking pile of a mess because no one checked to see if these two senile old goats even had a valid driver's license. This is management 101 on how not to run anything. And I get that the fallback position can be the legacy of Snyder. This is what the Flyers are. This is their tradition. We want tradition in sports. We want to have something that the Flyers have built with their alumni and community and stuff. That's super important. But you can't run your business on it when like you're running in the ditch while everyone else is on the Autobahn Expressway. If you're going to do it that way. I think there's belief out there that there's going to be questions of tampering right now with them. Fletcher, I mean, let's not even get to Carter Hart. If Carter Hart is your solution to what ails you because that's the only option you have, you haven't just looked at hope and said, I hope he works out. You've basically taken on a brand new position, swung for the fences at your first at bat, and you might not even see the end of the season. Like, I mean, you've got to be smart about this. And the best people under top management are the ones who know how to protect the top management from themselves. And so far, Fletcher's shown none of that. And if I'm a Philadelphia fan, I'd be very concerned about how this has started. And if I'm Dave Scott, I pull them all in and say, you guys have I don't care if you make the playoffs, but you have until the end of April, the three of you, to right this mess right now. And that's all you need to think about, and not take the results off the table. Fix what you guys just did, because none of you, like, if this was my company, imagine this happening under Shanahan. Never.
It would.
Well, no.
Imagine this happening under Jeremy Jacobs.
Peter, that was the example I was going to bring up, and this will be the last thing I'll say on the subject.
It would.
Then we can move on.
I will have my last say.
Right. I understand. Shanahan ran into this situation in January of 2015 or 2016. It was the year before they drafted Marner, where with Peter Horacek coming in to replace Randy Carlyle when the Leafs were in a playoff spot. because he realized the direction of the team was aimless. Was they continued to, like, they'd have one good week, then they'd have a bad week. There was a lot of scale. The whole thing. He decided, okay, I'm going to bring in Peter Horachek as the interim coach, just like Scott Gordon has just brought in as the interim coach. And what did the Leafs do? They started a systematic dismantling of the franchise. Trade Kessel, trade Phaneuf, bottom out, get Marner, get Matthews.
Yeah.
That's what happened over the next 15, 16 months was that. But it was the decision of the team president to do that. And now the thing is, the Flyers have that opportunity. They brought in Scott Gordon. He is not going to be the answer, the interim coach for the rest of the year. I'm not saying tell your team not to win, but they're doing a pretty good job of not doing that right now. And what you do is you trade Wayne Simmons, you trade the guys who are your UFAs, you move on from the guys that you want to move on from, you keep the guys who you do, and you build around that. If you do that and you get yourself a top 3 or 4 draft pick, you're on a path of turning this around fairly quickly, and I think the Flyers fan base will embrace that. If they don't, and they just putz around with this by putting in a 20-year-old goaltender who's not ready to do anything, all you're doing is continuing this morass of bull crap.
Well, I do want to say this too, Mike, and then Eck will finish it, and then we're done. I saw that Eck just posted in the chat room that Briz was Schneider. No, Briz was Holmgren. Yeah. Schneider just asked for the best goalie available, and Paul Holmgren came up with Ilya Bryzgalov, which was a mistake from the start. And if he'd asked other people outside of the organization, not all of them would have been on board. Ed Schneider did not ask for Ilya Bryzgalov personally. He did.
And they got bailed out by the compliance buyout. But go ahead, Eck.
I can't get into. I mean, we all know different things about that situation, but sure. I can't get into what I know or don't know about that situation. But I do know that. I'm going to stick by the fact that was Snyder. And yeah, I do know that you're right that they went for the best goalie available. Holmgren came back with a couple options, but Bryzgalov Snyder was dead set on Bryzgalov. That had to be the guy. There was no two ways about it. That's what I was told. I don't know. But it could be wrong, but these are just the things you're told, right? So I know it doesn't run. That runs. I know the counters the story that I don't know. Who knows? But here's the thing. Everything you guys are saying is perfectly 100% right and logical, and it's impossible to sit there and argue and disagree on it. Okay, because I'm not going to do that. Because honestly, as quote unquote pundits or experts, we have seen this go wrong more than it's gone right. What the Flyers are doing right now, we've seen that we know that historically this is not the best idea in the world, right? Fletcher, they got them. We joke about how you usually go from like a player friendly coach to a non-player friendly coach back and forth all the time. That tends to be the way things work in the team. The Flyers went from a non-organizational friendly GM to a organizational friendly GM in Fletcher. Mm-hmm. Okay. They went to a guy who Holmgren and Scott
can manipulate.
Not manipulate, but who will consider themselves a partner with them more than Hextall, okay? They will listen. I mean, Fletcher listened to other people in Minnesota when he made decisions, okay? Sure. He will listen, and where Hextall was, this is my gig, get away from me. That's what he would do, So and that's why I think that Hextall was a great fixer for a period of time. He came in there and he fixed a whole bunch of things. The question is, and the Flyers will let him do that. For the Flyers organization, a lot having to do with the fact that Ed Snyder was sick and then died, and then there was no one really in charge. It all timing worked out for that to allow Hextall to do that, and it was probably for their own good. It was definitely for their own good that it worked out that way. However, it's not. There came a point when Hextall was not able to take the next step, according to them. This is what they would say, that Hextall was not able to take this next phase. He wasn't go. He trusted. I mean, and part of this is Elliott is such a good guy, and everybody likes Elliott, and it's hard not to like him. I mean, this, Russ. He's like, you want to root for Brian. You want to root for Brian Elliott. Like you have no reason, and you hear the broadcasters on the
unless he's a member of your team.
Yeah, they're all rooting for Brian Elliott. You want to root for him, okay? And he would play well enough, and sometimes play amazingly well for a period of time. And it was so hard, and they just never really saw what Brian Elliott really was, And they were blinded to the fact that he really was just, you couldn't trust him for long stretches at all. You could once in a while he might come in and steal something for you. He was basically this the 2018 version of Ken Reggett. Okay, that's really what he is. Ken Reagan came in and won Game 7 for the Pittsburgh Penguins series one time, off the bench. No one knew what to happen, but then he couldn't carry the team when he had to. So it was a completely. So what's going to happen tonight is, for what it's worth, it's going to be exciting because it's going to feel like Flyers hockey again. And I know that is something that when I speak it in here, I'm speaking now. I'm playing a little bit devil's advocate, but I'm speaking as the. It's like I'm professing the powers of Ireland in Spain, because I'm because I'm talking for one group of Flyers fans to another group, the internet, and to a group of experts here who they don't see eye to eye. At the end of the day, I think they would not be doing this and I'm putting trust in Gordon here because I've talked to people. I had a long talk with some other people who know Gordon because I wanted to get find more about him. And I've known for years how smart he was. I mean, I've talked to him before.
Yeah, Gordon's good. This has nothing to do with Gordon.
It has everything to do with Gordon.
Nothing. Zero. This has zero to do.
Absolutely nothing.
Whoever the coach was, hold on. Whoever the coach was would still be watching Carter Hart in net. Trust me.
He's a placeholder, Rack.
No, they would. They went to Gordon. I promise you.
Oh, I'm sure they did because he's there, but it wouldn't matter.
Even before they announced Gordon as a coach, because obviously he was. You're right. They said, "Is Carter Hart ready to possibly handle this or not?" And he could have very easily said, "No, like this kid is absolutely not ready. He doesn't know how to cash his checks. He doesn't know where to he doesn't know where to buy his chicken. He hasn't learned all the things you have to learn as a professional living on your own or whatever." They could have easily said that, Mike, but they didn't. I think they did. I think and Gordon is not the most radical. He's a little bit conservative. I think Gordon is going off this thing and having seen what he's seen in Hart, and that Hart, over the last 10 games in the AHL, which is only 10 games, has been very good. And the beginning of the year, he was not very good at all for a while. And I think that was his period of learning how to, where to get his dry cleaning done and stuff like that. But I think now,
that's what you hope. There's ups and downs in seasons. You have no way of knowing that.
Of course. But at the end of the day, is this going to destroy Carter Hart?
Okay. Well, hey, you're not going to know tomorrow. You may not know
for a long time.
We'll see. Let's talk about something else.
We'll move on. But thank you guys thanks for all your points and everything. I'm just telling you that there's another side of things, and people can rip the Flyers all they want to for it. And I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. Okay, so this guy says I'm drinking the Kool-Aid in the chat room. It's pretty funny.
Okay,
I'm not. I'm really just stating the facts of this fan base, trying to state it up the middle, as best I can. There's all different sides to it, and I'm not, and the fans aren't running the show. But I'm just saying what the fans and what they're used to in the city is. It is a chicken or egg thing. They were raised. We were raised, because I'm part of this group because I was raised here. We were raised with this kind of move making sense for some reason, and it didn't always play out right. But it's a very Flyers thing to do. I have to say we haven't done it. We haven't seen Flyers things since Hextall was in there. That's all I'm going to throw out there. There you go. What else do we have to talk about?
Well, how about the downfall of the Montreal Canadiens? Because I think we started to see that yesterday. Because the Boston Bruins walked into Bell Center yesterday without Bergeron, without Chara. They've stuck in the playoff race. They were still in a wild card spot, and I watched about a period and a half of this game. No offense. Carey Price on one of the goals, I think it was Marchand's goal that made it 4-0. David Schlemko pushes Pasternak right into Carey Price and spills over him. They got completely outplayed by a team that they're supposed to be, at least in the standings, close to. I think the bubble here in terms of what happened early in the season where Max Domi was scoring a point per game and everything was going right is over with. And I think that this team, Carey Price, through 30 games, Carey Price is not Carey Price. Shea Weber has come back and he's playing fairly well for a guy who had, torn meniscus problems. Yeah. But there are a lot of problems with this team, and one of them has been the problem that they've had for 3 or 4 years, or maybe even longer than that. They can't score goals.
They might still be able to make a move now, Mike. The thing is, they did at least put together a better base than in previous years, that when we would say this, they were completely out of it. So
they're trying really hard to get a center, which is not news for Montreal, but they are. And the main reason is Kotkaniemi is running out of gas, and which was totally predictable. Obviously, he's a young player in the NHL. He was born in this millennium, for crying out loud.
And we said this, and we've seen examples of this with Puljujärvi. I think Draisaitl was in this first year. It's not the 10 games to start the ELC. It's the 40 games to start the clock towards unrestricted free agency. And we're getting, within the next 5 to 10 games, I think they're at like 31 or 32 games. I mean, if he plays more than 40, then they start the clock. They may not want to do that. So, I don't think they're going to send him to the World Junior to play with Finn. Right, but they could send him down to the American Hockey League, or they could, let him go back to a club team in Finland. I mean, those are possibilities.
Can they send him to the AHL?
Yeah. I think they could, but I think that the plan was that if he didn't make the Canadiens out of training camp, that he had an agreement with a team in the SM Liga.
It seems like, it's easy to point to him because he's new, but I don't think he's the issue. I don't think
he's an issue. I think he's surprised.
It doesn't seem like he's hurting himself. Does it? I don't know.
No. I think if they do what we were just saying they were going to do, it's going to be more for the machinations of Montreal management not wanting to burn a year when he's 18 and he's still learning. He's played well. He's played better than I thought he was going to, but he's not putting up great big offensive numbers, and they're not going anywhere. They're sort of a middle of the road team, and I think they can succeed or fail not based on what Jesperi Kotkaniemi does.
I agree. I think you're right. I think it'll depend on what moves they can make. I will tell you a good story. And the story of a team that was getting dumped on all preseason, and that's the Ottawa Senators. And I kept telling people they will not be the worst team in the league, or at least I was telling Eck that.
No, you did. Yeah, definitely did.
Not only are they not the worst team in the league, but with Brady Tkachuk there and Thomas Chabot being the best offensive defenseman in hockey, which he is, and definite Norris candidate, all of a sudden things look at least a little better in Ottawa. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, although they're a few points out, but you could see with just those two guys, if they add a little bit more, which they will, because they do have young talent coming, that they're not as far off as what was reported or what people were exaggerating about.
They lost Duchesne week to week with an injury. Bobby Ryan has found his second home again on the injured list. But Peter, as much as there might be things that are going on positively on the ice, you just posted something in our little chat here that they're going negatively.
The company, I'll just look this up because I just saw the tweet a few minutes ago when we were arguing about Flyers. Melnyk is countersued for $1 billion.
Yeah.
And it's believed that it says, I'm just trying to find this right now. I'm going to believe that in the suit, there's a claim that Melnyk is in a financially precarious situation. This is going to get ugly.
Well, this is the thing. It's like,
it's fair to say Capital Sports Management, owner of the Ottawa Senators, is not financially sound. This is from Travis Yost. This is a stunning charge for a claim here. Doubly so because it implicates that an NHL franchise, it kind of speaks of how combative litigation on this is going to be. I don't think we'll see downtown arena resolution anytime soon.
Wait a second. Our buddy Travis writing about the troubles of Eugene Melnyk financially? I'm shocked.
Travis thanks me every Christmas for not being in jail for stopping him.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Honestly, this is the thing.
No, but Travis is actually very connected, and what he was going to write years ago what turned out to be true, but it was so freaking risky. This is okay. This is interesting.
But this is the thing. Melnyk, I think the gentleman's name is Ruddy.
Ruddy
was his partner in the LeBreton Flats scenario. The plan was to build the arena and use condos, the selling of condos to fund some of the arena. I believe it was some, not all, but the problem is that Mr. Ruddy bought property adjacent to LeBreton Flats and started building condos of his own, which would undermine Melnyk's ability to keep the team and fund the arena. So honestly, this is sort of like he said, she said, I'll whip you back for you whipping me. This is going to get in. I'm telling you right now, the NHL is backing Melnyk. The NHL is backing Melnyk because he owns the team.
For as long as they can, Mike.
For as long as they can, yes.
That's the thing. Now that we see that this arena is all but broken down, again, Eck will always tell you, well, we never saw it coming, or they're going to say that this will happen slowly or whatever.
Yeah.
This situation could literally happen over the summer where all of a sudden they're gone and Quebec has a team.
I totally think that I mean, if I always put odds on it, I'm going to say it's like 25% that happens, Russ. But that's a huge number when you think about it.
Oh, it's a big number. It is.
I mean, that there's one in four. I mean, that 25% to say any team is 25% moving this summer is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you've got that big Videotron, Centre Videotron in Quebec City, sitting there, and the NHL would not
promise them a team. I'm telling you, I know this for a fact, and this is where the Quebec is being good citizens about this, because you have to be good citizens for the NHL.
Yeah. Right. This smacks of Atlanta, Winnipeg, because the Atlanta stuff came up literally out of nowhere at like the 11th hour, and Winnipeg was sitting. I mean at least publicly, that's right. I mean, I'm sure machinations behind the scenes.
No, we knew Atlanta was having trouble for a long time.
Right.
The backstory on Winnipeg, Atlanta that people, and you might know this, Peter, you probably do, but that people don't realize is that the time that Atlanta was for sale and they were trying to find places to go, Bostilli tried really hard to buy it, and the NHL blocked it out. Because remember, this was also the same time Bostilli was doing his thing.
He was just unlikable. They didn't like him.
They had been pissed off at him, but he was like, "Well, I can buy it anyway." And they made the Winnipeg thing happen quickly, because they made it happen quickly when it eventually happened, because Bostilli was like chomping at the bit too. So they had to make a move.
He was still around, and he'd been defeated on the Arizona thing, and they were worried because Atlanta had a weird thing in their franchise agreement and with the arena that they could get it. We will never see the NHL make that mistake again.
It did in St. Louis. Actually, the same thing exists in St. Louis, which is not the Blues are ever going to move.
Right.
It's the same. And because I know somebody who tried to buy the Blues, was a part of a group that tried to buy the Blues, and he told me about, there were a couple really bizarre stipulations that made the Blues almost impossible to sell. Like, really, just
that was because of previous ownership, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was like
because he had a lot of dealings with that city. I learned a lot from Emile Francis, so that was part of the reason. So here's the date, though. June 21st is the date that right around that date is when the NHL releases the next schedule. That
day before the draft, I believe.
Right. That is when this will it'll either happen a couple days before that, or the day before that, or that day. These are the days to.
No, you're right. No,
there's a problem with
hard to switch a schedule from Ottawa to Quebec. I mean, that's like
they'd be in the same division.
It's not. But that's when it would occur. You
would think it would occur, but it's possible it could even happen after that, because, I mean, if things fell apart quickly,
they wouldn't do that. The NHL won't do that. Like, once
they'll look terrible if they did it. But you're right. They won't.
They'll do that. They'll do it after the Stanley Cup final, because they don't want to take any of the shine away from the playoffs or anything.
The reason why it's also very risky is this thing. Like, I was told when Vegas was granted their team, the NHL was ready to give Quebec a team as well at that point, and they would have done it. But Quebec took not to do it because of the Canadian dollar at the time. They said, let's wait till the Canadian dollar rebounds. So that means the NHL already has approved in their heads, Quebec. They know, and I know that when this goes way back to 2010, when I was covering the training of the U.S. Olympic team before they went to Vancouver. I was at the thing, and I was talking with Kevin Allen. We were sitting there, and we both heard this thing about that, that the NHL had agreed that with Quebec, that if they put this together, that the NHL would come back to Quebec, and that's never talked about. It's like amazing, but it's just never talked about.
Can we talk about what you were saying we should talk about today, which was making up the trade for Drew Doughty? Or do you want to?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Drew Doughty for a second. Okay. I like that. All right. So Drew Doughty, many-time All-Star, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, kind of guy that's never available, right? But is possibly a defenseman. He's definitely a defenseman, but is possibly available. What is a defenseman like Drew Doughty worth? And I proposed a trade to you guys in the chat in our text the other day. That was just it was just a off the top of my head trade idea. It wasn't, it was somebody had mentioned something like it, but it wasn't really a rumor.
Right.
It was more of like a speculation. And I said, okay, so the Flyers are going to do this. what about Giroux, Sanheim, and Alex Lyon for Doughty and Quick? I said, but what about that? And that was my I threw that out there. And
then when your phone blew up.
And then Mike went crazy on me.
because
to me, that made sense for a lot of reasons. First of all, I mean, you're going to have to give up something like Giroux to get Doughty, and they don't want to give up Giroux, I'm sure. But you got, if you're going to get Doughty, you got to give up somebody. Giroux has a lot of value. Sanheim has a lot of value. They've worked. He's definitely a good young defenseman. Lyon, they're going to have to give a goalie back if they get Quick. So that's where that came from.
Okay, and I want to get the opinion of everybody else here. I believe, and I'm not sure that LA is even going to address trading Doughty like in the season, but maybe, remember he's making, I believe, $7 million this year before the 8-year, $88 million deal kicks in, and he's 29 years old. So that's the thing that is the thing I think mitigates the value of one of the best defensemen in the league. He's 29. Yeah. Going on 30, he said now he's entering the first year of a deal that's going to carry him to age 38. So that knocks down his value. But I believe LA, if they're trading him, they'd have to take some salary back in a deal. But they're not going to want a guy like Giroux, who's a comparable age. They're going to want young.
Don't want Gostisbehere or Sanheim and other players.
Right, they're gonna okay. If you're gonna put together a package for Philadelphia for Drew Doughty, I would say it would be like Gostisbehere or one of the two. Morgan Frost, their first round pick in 2019 or 2020, that's lottery protected, and probably they could probably say a Carter Hart. They'd want 2 or 3 young assets and a first round pick. That's what it'll cost.
Morgan Frost and Carter Hart and a first-round pick and Gostisbehere.
He's the best or second best defenseman in the NHL.
Carter Hart wouldn't be in that deal, but it could be like Radcliffe. It could be like Radcliffe, and I do think that's exactly what they would want. And to be honest, this is part of the reason why Carter Hart's playing. He's being evaluated, whether it's fair or not.
Right.
And,
for sure.
And they're going to all decide. They're all going to huddle up after this game and decide, is he ready in the next 2 or 3 years? And if he's not, then they're going to make a big trade for a big goalie, and then they're going to probably make another one of these trades, and they're probably going to
decide this.
Hold on, and then they're going to probably sell off like half the farm. Like this is what they're signed up to do now. That's right. What this is. All of this is why Chuck Fletcher is here. He's not here to protect the young assets anymore.
He's there to evaluate and then determine and then make moves accordingly. Now
they're going to give it a little more time than one game.
Now, Peter, I'll ask you about Winnipeg, but I'll say this in terms of Toronto, because Doughty and Toronto have been attached. But how many big salaries can you have? If the Leafs decided that, okay, we want Drew Doughty, you're starting with Nylander. You're probably throwing in a first-round pick either in 2019 or 2020. You're probably throwing in a Timothy Liljegren, which is their best or second-best defensive prospect, and you're probably throwing in another young forward. Probably not Kapanen, but somebody like Andreas Janssen or Jeremy Brock. So you're talking 3 young pieces and a first-round pick for a guy who's making 11. This is what I'm saying is this. It's going to be really tough for the LA Kings to get good value, to get anywhere close to equal value, and you won't know if you're getting that until 4 or 5 years down the line. But that's what they're going to expect for a guy who can step in on your top pairing and run your power play and do everything else he does.
I mean, let's be fair here.
The Leafs are not getting Drew Doughty.
I agree.
The whole idea that this is something that is even being bantered about it just speaks to sort of the crazy level of things. First of all, to get Drew Doughty and afford him means sacrifices someplace else.
Yeah.
Because you arguably have $20 million on your payroll next year that you didn't have this year.
Right.
Now you're going to add another 11 million onto that. So 31 million at the lowest.
You're talking about paying half your cap to 4 players.
31 million. Plus Mr. Tavares at 11 million. So now you're at 42 million. Oh, we've got to pay Nylander 6.9.
Nylander's part of the deal.
Right, so that's why I said in the chat, that the only way this would happen, and I don't think it's going to happen either, would be they would have to sacrifice
Frankly,
because that would
I
be
actually want Dubas to do it,
Yeah.
and I want him to do it so badly because because no matter what, there still will be depth issues on the Leafs. They will still grind Freddie Anderson into the ground so that by the time they get past the second round, the guy will be a skeleton walking because of pure exhaustion.
I mean, you're already
and then he's going to
starting.
have to manage his salary cap for the next years, and it's going to be Chicago North.
It's like Freaky Friday. You and Mike.
Stan Bowman will be texting Kyle Dubas things, going, "I told you so. I told you so. I told you so." Like, oh, let's do it. Actually, let's get a GoFundMe and help them. Like, I mean, this is comedy at the best.
Hold on. Realistically, though, this can't even happen until Matthews and Marner are signed. Dubas wouldn't even attempt to do it.
And you know what, Russ? It's good.
No, Russ, we want him to do it. The fans demand it, Russ. Just like the Flyers. The fans need hope. The fans need hope.
It's good that Russ said that because Dubas basically intimated that in his presser yesterday when he talked to the media. He said, essentially, I need to know where we're going in terms of Marner and Matthews. Right. We're negotiating with them right now. And he's even saying that maybe that would be the case before the deadline, but because he doesn't want to go out and spend assets for rentals. He wants to go out and trade assets and maybe trade a first-round pick to get guys who have term left on their contracts. And you can't do that if you don't know how much Matthews wants and how much Marner wants. And that's what he's going to use as motivation to get those guys locked up before, and basically laughed in everybody's friggin' face when it came to offer sheets because he's gonna match it. He said it. I'm matching it.
No question that, but unless he teaches Marner how to play left defense on the entire time, we're in trouble. Like they need.
They're not trading Doughty anyhow. I don't think he's getting traded.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Why wouldn't they?
I can see Doughty getting traded.
Why. I'm gonna say it one last time.
Yes.
Until Rob Blake tells you he is rebuilding, which he's done everything to the opposite and the contrary, the same as the Flyers, this isn't happening.
I think there's a better chance of Alex Pietrangelo being traded in St. Louis because he's only got a year left in his contract, or Parayko in St. Louis, or there's a couple, the Pesci and Falk and Carolina. There's a few others, but those guys I can see getting moved. I can't see Doughty getting moved, because if Doughty is moved, you may as well move Kopitar, you may as well move Carter, you may as well completely blow it up, because that's your best player. Doughty is your best player.
Doughty's going to Seattle. Book it.
He's gonna get cleaned in the expansion track.
John, I mean, my deal also had Jonathan Quicken, which I think is a vital, important point. Like that's that part for the Flyers too. Like that's why my trade had that in it too. But I listen. I do agree that the chances of Doughty getting moved are small, but I don't see any reason why the Kings won't entertain it in the next couple years. Like there at some point there.
A couple years is one thing. I'm saying right now.
Right now. But I mean, you could be even looking at the draft when Doughty could be actually.
It's possible. That is possible.
But to that point, the thing is like right now he's 29. Of course, they're going to want to trade him when he's 31 or 32, when he's in year 2 or year 3, making $11 million.
Right.
Of course they want to, because they know he'll be, on the downslope of a great career, and they're looking to cut their losses. But that's the problem. For you to be able to move him, you have to move him when he still has value to other teams, when he's a declining asset. And I'm saying he's still going to be a great defenseman at that point, unless injuries get taken into consideration. You're not going to get any. First of all, you're not going to get any return, and you narrow the amount of teams that can afford to pay somebody $11 million.
So last roundtable thing that I could think of, Eck. Okay. So Carolina Hurricanes before Tom Dundon were better than the Carolina Hurricanes now. Now they did get some assets for Skinner that they were presumably going to lose him, but in the end result, have they taken a step back? I think they have. I think this team has taken a step back. I'm not even sure where we should even be as high on them defensively anymore, simply because I don't know what their system is anymore. Bill Peters had a system. I don't know what Rob Brindamore is exactly doing. He doesn't have goaltending. I'll grant him that. But there's no guarantee they'll have goaltending next year either. They'll get somebody. But, Carolina's not a destination place either. So there's going to be teams like Carolina and Philly and other teams possibly fighting for goalies.
They're Philly South. That's what they are. They've got 10 defensemen in their organization, maybe 11, and they have no goaltending.
They're 3-5-2 in their last 10. They have a -9 differential.
Yeah. No, I think it's safe to say that they are they're taking a step back, which might have, but I don't know how much Dundon has to do with it. Because I think part of it is the natural like growth progression of a team, right? They
Well, he forced the trade of Skinner quickly. He could have waited till the deadline.
I guess he could have, but then I think I don't blame him for trying to get that done if they liked what they were getting for him. I mean, I don't see how they would have liked what they got for him. But
like I said, when the trade was made, he got a deadline return during the summer. And with a guy with a year left in a contract, you expect to get more in return than just 2 draft picks and Cliff Boo.
No, completely agreed. I mean, and I think that's what you have to look at. I think that part of that is like, you see the younger players making progress, and then there's the natural step back in a year after that, which I think is what you're seeing a little bit of now. Kind of like what you saw in Colorado. You saw a really good, Colorado team to go to a really bad team, then become a very good Colorado team. I think that you see there's a bit of an ebb and flow that goes on with the younger players.
Falk's got only 1 year left too. They're going to have to do something with him.
Yeah, I mean, Aho had a rough start, but he's coming on strong. They obviously, they made some good. I mean, that young Russian kid they got for whatever. He's really good. I mean, they're. I think that it's hard to say that they're worse. They're not worse off than they were. I don't think, because I don't think losing
in the standings. I think they are.
Well, I mean, yeah, but no, in the standings. I mean, worse off in terms of the long range plans for them. I think they are.
They still have the ability to sort of retool this team, but again, you're operating from a position of strength.
They definitely need a general manager. Let's just throw it out there. I mean, they need somebody who's going to give Dundon a run for his money, and that Dundon's going to have to be okay with that. Like they're going to need somebody who's going to be able to come in there and for all that Waddell is, he's a great politician. And I think that part of that, he's a friend. I mean, I really think Waddell is a great guy, but he is definitely a politician. Okay, and he is. Mm-hmm. And he is playing this, and he himself knows, I am sure, I can guarantee you, without even saying anything that would get me in trouble, that he knows that they need a general manager. And they need somebody who's going to, so there's him and somebody else talking about the hockey things you should do with Dundon there. They need that.
Just think about this. Jeff Skinner has 24 goals. Ferland's got 11. Aho's got 12. Nobody else is in double digits.
Yeah, I know. No, they don't have any.
Whatever they thought they got in return as a return for that trade, it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't seem like it was at the time.
No, I think we said that, and we did say that.
I think that's. I don't know how did Skinner have a no movement clause?
Nope.
No, and he moved.
No, but I wondered if
he had a no trade, and he
no traded with the list.
Oh, so he had a no trade, and he did kind of control where he was going to go. That's what I was.
10-team list though. It was a pretty big list.
Well, yeah, that definitely limits
something like that.
And what teams with no trades often do? You know this. I mean, if you're this is the big oldest trick in the book. If you got 11 teams on your list, you put 5 teams on there that would never trade for you, because then you only have to deal with then you get down to 6 teams.
Peter, let me ask you, because you were on yesterday and I watched some of that Winnipeg Tampa game. I mean, everybody's saying that there's your Stanley Cup preview, and it's plausible, but I've seen Tampa play twice this week. I'm really impressed with where they are. I mean, not to take anything away from Winnipeg, because I thought they played great too. But I look at that and I don't see how they don't come out of the East unless somebody big gets injured again.
They've got some flaws.
Yeah,
that game was a super entertaining hockey game to watch. Like, if you want to watch some fire wagon, 2 teams just going for hockey, that was a great game to watch. But I don't think it's reasonable to think that that's how either of those teams wants to play in a playoff series, because that's not a recipe for winning. There's some pretty brutal defensive plays for both teams. Mark Scheifele's getting a ton of love right now. Well, there was one goal that was basically a direct result of Scheifele. I don't even think you could call it gliding on the back check. It was pretty bad, and such. I think Tampa is beatable, And I think Winnipeg's beatable, but it's going to take the right type of disciplined team to keep them from being able to do what they do well, which is score. And that's what they're so good at. They both have so many weapons to score. And, the power play units, 1 versus 2, it didn't disappoint, right? If your top unit doesn't score, well, your second unit will score. And it was a ton of fun to watch, but I don't think that's a realistic type of game that either team wants to play in the playoffs, and they won't get away winning very far if they do that. So to your point, I think Tampa Bay is the class of the league, Mike. I think they're the deepest team. They're probably the most well-rounded from the net out, but they're beatable. And Winnipeg proved that. And I think other teams can beat them too. You just have to have the right tactics and execution to do it.
Yeah, I mean, just one thing on Winnipeg. I know that over the last couple of days, I've heard a lot of talking up of Morrissey and the way that he's been playing lately. And we'll end on this because Russ has got to go. I question what Cheveldayoff is going to do because, this is the debate we've been talking about. You've got Myers as a pending UFA. You've got Bufflin not locked up for, I think, another couple years. Trouba is an RFA 1 year away from being a UFA, and Morrissey's on year 1 of a 2-year bridge. So next July, you can sign him. I mean, there's a lot of traffic in terms of where they're going to go on their blue line, which I think is one of their strengths. And we're not even taking into consideration Kyle Connor and Line A and all these other things. Yeah. So it's almost as chaotic as the Leafs situation. So but specifically on the defense, I don't know what Cheveldayoff does.
Right now, what he does is he probably acquires, like he did last year, a depth guy like a Joe Morrow to put in. The interesting about the Jets defense is, well, there's still, I think, some fundamental challenges with some play in front of the net with Hellebuck, and I think it's more of a psychological thing with the defense, expecting him to make some saves that he's not. They've got to clean up some play around there. The Myers-Kulikov pairing, since Kulikov's come back from injury, has been exceptional, and Myers has really taken off. So Myers is a UFA after this year, and I think, as much as I've wanted to run him out of town at times, drive him to the airport, whatever it is, I think, this is going to be very interesting to how it plays out. And the question I think that really comes into this when you look at Tyler Myers is, does he need a player like Kulikov to steady him? And if that's the case, you don't want to be paying him money and then have to play a guy like Kulikov, $4.2 million or whatever it is, to just steady the ship on the third pairing, because you're the guy you really, right? Like, it's an interesting situation. But I don't think anything changes with that until the offseason. And I think Jets will be buyers that way on defense. Also, let's, 2.5 months from now, we're going to be thinking about this because we'll be worried about injuries and stuff like that. And then we'll have a pretty good idea, right, of where things sit. But he'll be a buyer. What he does going forward in the offseason, well, I'm of the firm belief that Trouba will not be a Jet next year. So yeah, they better win the cup, like the Hockey News says.
And backing up what I've been saying about Jake Gardiner being gone, Kyle Dubas came out yesterday and said, we'd love to have him back, but we only divvy up the pie so many ways. Yeah. And I think they'd be amenable to bringing him back if he was being paid, say, $5 million.
Yeah.
But he's going to get 6.5 to 7 in free agency. And I seriously doubt he's going to take $1.5 million discount. So I think
if the Leafs win the cup, he's going to go and get paid because you've got your cup ring.
Even if the Leafs don't win the cup, he's going to.
And if the Leafs don't win the cup, you're going to have to ask, what's it worth to me? How close were we? And is it worth? Am I going to have another shot? And is this the best case? And I've said this since the salary cap came in, and I'll keep saying it till we're blue in the face. At a certain point in time, you'll find it with some players. They are going to make a decision about their best opportunity for success and winning versus being paid. And I think what we see more often than not, though, is getting paid is a lot more fun than struggling to win, because there's no guarantee you'll get a win, but you will get paid. And Jake Gardner's going to get paid.
And from the management side of things, it looks like what Kyle Dubas is going to do is he'll keep Gardner as an own rental. He'll try to acquire. I think he's going to try to acquire that top 4 defenseman before the deadline. You know, whether it's Pietrangelo or Parayko or whoever, he's going to get somebody who's locked up on a contract for at least another year, maybe 2, to give him somebody to replace Gardner as a top 4. And then they've got 2 first-round picks playing in the AHL. He even came out and said in this press conference yesterday that if Timothy Liljegren had not been had a high ankle sprain in the first week of December, that the plan was to bring him up in the second half of the year like they did Travis Dermott last year. So that tells me they think Liljegren is relatively close. Now that may delay it until next year, but Liljegren will be on the radar. Sandin will be on the radar. They're going to let Hainsey go. They're going to let Gardner go, and maybe they get a one or 2 veteran guys to come in. But it's just going to be like the Jets. It's going to be players in, players out, and it's all going to be based on what they have to pay Matthews and Marner and what they can afford to pay on the blue line. And if they have a couple entry-level deals, then they have more room to play with in terms of their forwards. It's going to be the 2 teams are going to be very similar about where they are. So
yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Right. We will be back tomorrow. We'll let everybody know what time. I think it's going to be 1:00, but always check my Twitter feed to know what the time of the show is. For Russ Cohen, for Eklund, for Peter Tessier, I'm Michael Lagello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.